of you have seen and known that I managed to grenade my Hilux's engine earlier this year. Now it is back up and running, and I did make a few postings about it, and there were a lot of questions regarding what happened, how to overcome it, how to fix it, a whole ton of questions. So I thought let's make a video and discuss all of it on how I managed to destroy and fix my Hilux.
We're just checking, D's got a problem, we're just checking, we're pulling over for detail. Just relay the message forward to Louis, we stop Hilux. Well, just stopping for detail, he's got a problem, we're not sure what it is yet.
Sounds like the car's misfiring as well. So let's talk about how it happened. Now it happened on a Cape Road rally trip. We were on the Impassable Pass, making our way up to the Namibian border, and we were actually on our way back home. It was the final day after a 5 or 6 day adventure. We were in Nieuwoudtsville, and we were driving back home. We were going to go through the Tankwa. And on the gravel road, well, earlier that rally actually, we managed to hit a bad bump, destroyed the radiator fan, didn't destroy the radiator, managed to fix that, blah blah blah, all that scenario happened. We did a few bad dips we just didn't see. So the wheels went up, which looked fine. However, there is a lot of oil under here somewhere. So I don't know if it's diff oil or engine oil. I might have done my sump. So I've decided to do a blade delete on my entire radiator. So there's not a single blade left, and this bounced off. So I think this bounced off. There's power steering fluid that's lying down there. So I think it bounced off, came down, hit the fan, and destroyed my fan. So that has to be fixed. So what we're doing now is we're taking, well, our backup plan is to take the windshield wiper sprayers, line them up on the radiator so that I can spray the radiator to cool it down. But for now we also have the aircon off and the heater on max, so it's going to be a very hot day, and they're expecting 30 degrees Celsius. So it's going to be a hot drive for us in the car. So on the way home from Nieuwoudtsville back home via the Tankwa, we were probably about 100 k's outside of Nieuwoudtsville on a gravel road. I was doing about 110 on the gravel road, going up an uphill, and just suddenly felt power loss. I had no power in the engine. I thought, okay, maybe I changed into the wrong gear. Went, downshifted a gear, and still put foot on the accelerator and no power at all. And I knew something wasn't right. So I quickly pulled over to the side of the road, and when I came to a standstill, I could feel the whole car jiggling as it was misfiring, and I knew something wasn't right.
Compression in the sump, so somewhere when your piston comes up and compresses the air,
so
somewhere
overfueling
or too lean, dan brand hy gat in die piston en dan stoot hy die kompressie verby die piston in die sump in, en dan die sump uit stoot dit by die breather, by die dipstick uit, die kompressie.
So that's tow, meneer.
That's fucked. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, there goes our killer. Maybe it's time for a V8.
Well, I always say it's bad luck, good luck. Who knows? Bad luck the motor blew, but might be good luck. You might be getting a V8.
Right. Switched off the car. Andrews was behind me as the Kennedy recovery vehicle for the Cape Road Rally, and we did a quick check. And then when he checked, he immediately realized, listen, there's a hole in the piston. So what happened is I managed to blow a hole into piston number 2. But I'll get there now, because the story of the Cape Road Rally doesn't end here. We were about 100 kilometers from Nieuwoudtsville and quite a while still from home. And obviously I can't switch on the engine now, and I don't want to switch on the engine, so now I have to try and get myself back home. So Andrews being the recovery vehicle and the trip being completed, we were actually just on our way home. We decided, cool, let's tow myself back to the nearest civilization, which is Klein Willem basically. Andrews had his father come up with his car trailer from Paul, and our plan was that we'll tow myself, or Andrews will tow myself and the Hilux down. He'll come up with a car trailer and we'll meet wherever we meet, load onto the car trailer and then trailer it home.
We sacrificed Dieter's very nice car mats to save his lights, because we're going to tow him now, and the rocks on the gravel road will heat his lights out. So
you want shackles, or are you going to put it straight onto the bars?
A soft shackle.
So Andres is getting a buddy with a car trailer to come up. So we are now being towed back to the N7. We're going to go down the N7 and then his friend with the car trailer is going to come down to meet us halfway or wherever we meet to load the car into the car trailer. It'll be easier and yeah, take it from there. We then made our way to Van Rensdorp Pass. Now for those that know the area, it's a very steep tarmac pass that goes down and very long. Now obviously I don't have engine braking, I don't have brake assist, and I also don't have power steering on top of a whole list of things. So going down and downhill, the towing wouldn't work. I would most likely cook my brakes and it's very dangerous to do. So we pulled over there, swapped around, hooked the tow rope that I'm now in front of Andres, so he was braking me as we're going down the downhill. Because it's a downhill, so obviously my brakes aren't working because I can't run the engine, which means I don't have proper brakes. It's like riding an old school car where I've got no power steering, no brake assist either. So we towing in reverse, well, wrong way around. So he's braking me as we go down the downhill, and when we get to the bottom, we have to swap around again. That's the plan.
The stupid guy driving the Cummins drove over the rope. I stalled the car because it doesn't want to idle. And coming downhill, I was trying to freewheel, so we just get as much distance as we can down the hill. And I stalled the car, and then I tried to running start again, but then I drove in and drove over the rope. And the rope's not made to drive over at that speed.
So why the cycles didn't go?
It all went well. Andres did have an issue with his Cummins Patrol as well, where he couldn't idle. He had an idle issue or a fuel issue. So every now and then the car would stall, and while towing me, he would roll start himself, which is quite funny. And surprisingly enough, I didn't feel it at all. I would feel every now and then a little bit of a jerk motion of him roll starting it, but nothing major. And then as we reached the final straight at the bottom of Van Rensdorp Pass, I felt a heavy jerk motion, and I looked back and I just see there goes the ropes. So the rusty ropes, when he tried to roll start himself, he drove over the rope, which exploded the rope basically. But thankfully it was in the final stretch. I coasted down, stopped, pulled over, we knotted the rope and carried on.
Say that again?
I heard a quote the other day which is quite relevant to what's happening here now. The adventure starts where the trouble begins. So we used the rusty rope to tow me about 200 kilometers back to safety. It broke once because Andre drove over it when he was towing me down the mountains. He was behind me, there was too much slack, and then he drove over it, so it popped there. But we just put a knot in the rope, and then obviously every time it scuffed on the ground, it also took a beating. But it got us here, and I have to say it was quite a smooth ride. Like a normal rope, you could like get jerked forward, but this one just absorbs it nice and softly. But yeah, thank you Rusties for saving us once again. And then we met Andres' dad just outside of Klein Willem, where he brought the car trailer up. So we loaded the car onto the car trailer and we thought, cool, done. Now let's make our way back home. Again, the story doesn't end there.
Ja, die op die boot leven een beetje weer per kan je op af.
Die spaarwiel die samen in, hè?
Ja, ik vond dat ik moet voelen.
was dit, daar's dit hy. So die difflock on, agter. So we're making our way home. We towed about 200 kilometers, then Andrius' parents came through with the car trailer and we are now just outside of Porterville. And now the trailer has got a flat tire. So yeah, we're waiting for a car to come through from Paul that has a spare tire for the trailer. And then hopefully after that we'll finally get home. It's been a long day. It's going to 6 o'clock. We were up since 6 this morning driving. So yeah, fun times again. With the Hilux now on the car trailer, and we thought, cool, we'll make our way home. We realized about 100 kilometers, 50 kilometers out, that the car trailer tire is busy bubbling. So with the weight of the Hilux on there, the suspension or the tire was now touching the fender, which was heating the tire up too much, and the tire was starting to bubble. On top of that, we realized that Andrius' dad's Land Cruiser, where the tow hitch goes in and the pin slots in, there's no pin, it's just the rattle bolt, anti-rattle bolt holding it in. The pin is missing in action. So we stopped at a petrol station and then quickly sorted out that issue there. I took the tow bar or the tow pin out of my Hiluxes that's on the trailer out, put it into the cruiser, and we put wooden pieces between the suspension to lift the tire or the trailer away from the tires so it wouldn't heat up. As we made our way out, unfortunately the tire already got damaged and delaminated, so then we sat on the side of the road just outside Piketberg with a delaminated tire, and on top of that, as we pulled off the side of the road as like a nice green patch, we realized that it's soft sand. So as Andrius' dad drove into the car trailer, himself and the trailer just sank down. Thankfully it's a very capable vehicle, so he managed to put on front and rear lockers and pull his way out to level soil. But now we sat with a delaminated tire with a trailer that they took the spare wheel off because someone borrowed it for the weekend and they didn't put the spare tire back. So there we sat and waited another hour and a half for someone from Paul to collect an extra spare tire and bring it through to us for the trailer. Then we managed to fit it on and finally we got home. So that was a very big and long ordeal, not just blowing the engine, getting a delaminated tire, almost losing the car trailer because of the tow hitch coming off, and almost getting stuck with the car trailer and everything. There were enough people there to tow it out, but yeah, it was a long night, ended up being a long day getting back home after this whole ordeal as well. Now let's talk about what exactly happened. After this whole ordeal, I took it to JP from the V8 shop and I said, here's my engine, here's what happened. He was on the rally, so he knew what happened. Tell me a bit more information. And over the whole process of getting it fixed and learning a lot and talking to people, I actually gained a lot of knowledge about the D-4D engine, what happens, why it's a common problem, how to prevent it, things like that. So let me tell you all this information I managed to gather. Some of it might be incorrect, some of it might be controversial, some of it might be opinionated, but this is just the information I gathered through this whole few months long project. So let's start with what happened. So after JP opened the engine, they realized that it was a hole in piston number 2. Now the reason for this is injector failure, which after a lot of research and a lot of people talking to me, seems like it's a common problem on the my year model's D4D engine, that the injectors are weaker and the piston is weaker, and those two combined just cause this grenade of an engine to happen and take place. So basically what happened, injector number 2 failed, which means injector usually mists, and because the injector gets clogged up because of dirty diesel, we'll get there now, the injector turned into like a spray or a drip. That drips on one specific point, and with the heat and the combustion, it burned a hole in the piston, and that caused some compression which I had in the engine, and that caused the damage essentially. Now injector failure happens because of various reasons, but mainly because of dirty diesel. Now there's a lot of news reports currently going around, and for a few years or months and years back, of South Africa struggling with dirty diesel, people putting in either water or paraffin and just dirt in the diesel not being regulated and maintained. And there's a whole thing happening now where people are going and checking up on fuel stations, and regulatory companies are checking to regulate this diesel and make sure it is up to standard, and they are finding a lot of fuel stations which are not doing it and are not regulating their fuel and have dirty fuel mixed with diesel, paraffin, things like that. Now the Hilux does have a water filter to pick up if there is water in the diesel. However, paraffin can still get through, which is even more deadly or dangerous for a engine. And obviously dirt and things, you've got your fuel filter, but things still come through. And unfortunately, with the type of traveling I do into remote areas, you don't always have the advantage of filling up at renowned petrol stations. You tend to fill up at all these no-names and little small fuel stations at the side of the road, which tend also to have dirtier diesel than your big industry or big franchise companies. Now, one of the main questions I get is how to overcome this dirty diesel issue. Now, from the research I've done, you have a fuel filter in your vehicle. You can add a second fuel filter. The fuel filters go into microns, the size of the filter, the size of the holes in the filter which allow the diesel through. Now, you can go with a smaller micron, but then you stand the chance of reducing the fuel pressure coming through, and then you have a risk of getting too little fuel into the engine and losing power there. You can add a second diesel filter, which is on my list to do, just for safety's sake, which is the same micron. So just to help, having a second diesel filter there is always a good thing to have. You must also just be careful not to interrupt the fuel line so that you don't have, again, like I said, lack of power because of the filter reducing the amount of fuel going in. What you can also do, and what is on my list actually this week, is to take out my fuel tanks. I've got a long range tank and the normal fuel tank on the Hilux. I'm going to drop both of them and clean them out. I don't know when last they've been cleaned, just to take out the rust and all the gunk and the dirt, like a dam. It's got all the gunk that sits underneath. To take all of that out, clean it out, make sure my fuel pipes are all good and clean and fresh again. That's maybe a good maintenance option to go for. Now, the best advice I can give to make sure that you have proper fuel and you don't have injector failure, there's two things. Number one, make sure you fill up fuel at a known franchise. I know we all like to try and support local, but the chances of a big franchise being regulated for standardized fuel is much higher than a small thing in the middle of nowhere. Now, unfortunately, due to my travel, we are forced sometimes to throw in at all these unknown petrol stations and small towns. However, I've got a long range tank, you've got jerry cans. Rather just work into your route planning that you'll fill up at these big towns that has the franchises and known brands that we know. Now, secondly, is to check your injectors. Apparently, at 150,000 kilometers, it's always recommended to replace the injectors on the D4Ds especially, and also just to go with OEM. Stick with OEM. You can recon them, you can get aftermarket ones, but like a lot of people have told me, just stay with OEM. They are good. Just make sure to check them and replace them at 150,000 kilometers intervals if they need to be replaced. So you can have them checked, you can take them out, send them to a company, they can test them to see if they're still good, and at around that kilometer mark rather replace them if they are faulty or seems like they have a reason for fault. And then also, I'm currently sitting on 270,000 kilometers on my engine, so that is well overdue, and the fact that it lasted that long, it was imminent for failure to happen like it did here. Now, secondly, what I've also learned, yes, I do have a map in my vehicle, and of course a lot of people came at me, yeah, it's because of the map that you destroyed your engine, it's all because of the mapping, the tuning, bad tune, blah, 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 blah. And yes, I do have a map in my vehicle. I've got a stage 1 tune on my vehicle, which I had done at Q-Tech, and then I went back multiple times to KSD, Koersie Swanepoel Developments, to check the map, to do power runs, to make sure everything is fine with the engine and things like that.
Okay, so we had the Hilux back on the dyno after the engine was repaired. And with the exact same ECU file still on, we didn't touch the mapping side of things. The bucky is slightly less power, it's making 145 instead of 148. But what is interesting is our air-fuel ratios are actually a lot leaner, which is great for diesel, which means it will run cooler. And boost pressure is still very similar to what we ran previously. And Dieter was saying he's going to run a trailer and so on. So for me, it is just safer this way, and instead of pushing the limits on the fuel, it's very similar power, and I think this is the best way forward for now.
What can you tell the people that blame the tune for it?
All right, so obviously that's easiest thing to say. Previously, this car ran also a fairly good air-fuel ratio, which was not over the top. But unfortunately, if you do have an injector that goes open, any piston won't last on that. And the air-fuel ratios that's here previously, and the boost pressure is not over the top. And the bucky's been running for quite a while with this file on. And it just goes to show with brand new injectors, you've got a completely different pattern going here, as we see here on the AFR table.
Cool. So you say it's a safe tune?
It's a safe tune, definitely a lot leaner than on some of the limits that we push. You also got the front mount cooler, which will also be better for it. But this air-fuel ratio on here is no ways that you can overheat the piston.
And what, for interest's sake, what are the powers you have pushed on the D4D?
So we generally go, the norm is between 150 and 160. That's on an everyday one. I want to say more lower 150s, and we go 450. This one, the reason the torque's higher, it's boosting slightly harder. It's boosting just under 1.4 bars, where on the normal one we go 1.3 bar. We have run these motors up to 1.8 bar without issues. So this is just a good in-betweener. Standard is around 1 bar. So the amount that we lift it up with is adequate for what we want. And as I say, hundreds of them run more than 150 kilowatt without any issues.
And what's the biggest numbers you've had in a D-4D Hilux?
The D-4Ds, we have pushed them up to 190. Then you sit at 1.8 bar boost, and generally you also then start failing injectors. Still no engines, no gaskets, no issues, but you're pushing that injector more and more, and eventually the injector fails. And the biggest problem is our fuel quality in the country is a big concern. So I've had injector failures at 40,000 Ks with other manufacturers as well, which means our fuel is just not it is a problem. I mean, on the Hiluxes, I would tell the guys 150,000 Ks, you don't even have to test them, just put a new set of injectors in, you are pushing the limits. And I mean, I think this one was around 170. So unfortunately, that is where we end up with the injectors at the end of the day.
Last question, what advice would you give to people to take care of the engine to make sure that they don't have the similar issue?
Yeah, so it is very nice if you can have that extra fuel filter that has got a lot more filtration. It's a bit of a schlep to fit it and so on, but that is the number one. And number two is the injectors at 150,000. You can definitely start looking at replacing.
And now I have been mentioned that I should have a look at my injectors, but obviously it's quite expensive. The most expensive part of this whole rebuild was actually the injectors, coming in at about, I think, 26 or 28,000 Rand for the injectors. Again, which was actually the most expensive part. The whole repair of my engine cost me about 60 or 70,000 Rand for all the parts replaced, labor, everything like that. And that was also with minimal damage done to my engine. So I got away off lightly. So yes, the most expensive part is the injectors, unfortunately. So rather make sure that you replace them before you sit with double the amount of damage, and rather go with OEM. It's up to you. That's an opinionated thing, going with OEM, but that is what I would do. So let's come back to the engine rebuild. JP from the V8 shop did the engine rebuild. We replaced the injectors with OEM injectors. He added Merrill pistons, and then the bearings were still 100% fine. And I think he just engineered or bored the cylinders a bit because of possible damage. I'm not sure. I'll find out all the exact details from him shortly. But yeah, he basically put my engine together. It's not a big deal. On a 2x4, you can actually just replace it by taking the sump out and working with the engine still in it. But because I've got the 4x4 and the diff is in the way, then you have to take the engine out. But basically, I had the engine rebuilt in, let's say, a week and a half. Let's say 2 weeks, just to give people a bit of leeway. But 2 weeks with ordering parts, doing the labor, doing the engine, it's not a big deal. But unfortunately, that is something that happens with these engines. Now, like I said, best way to prevent it is extra diesel filter, make sure you throw in repeatable places, and extra maintenance. Make sure to check those injectors and things like that. You can obviously go with forged internals, you can do race injectors if you really want to, I guess, I don't know. But yeah, that is basically what happened and how I fixed it, thanks to JP. So let me do a cost breakdown for you. The head bolts, pistons, gasket set, that was about 11,000 Rand. Again, these prices are now relevant to where are we now, September of 2025. So these could change. Washers, 4 Rand something, 27 Rand in total. Then the injectors were the most expensive, coming in at 26,500 Rand. Those are also, the price fluctuate a lot. D-4D washers, 280. Cam belt kit, that is 2,800 Rand. Engine mountings, oh yeah, one of my engine mountings was gone, so we had that replaced. That was 1,200 essentially, 1,100. The D-4D intake, that's also a thing. He picked up a second-hand one for 3.5, but I had an issue with the intake on my engine where, first of all, I had it cleaned. That makes a big difference. So if you want to manage your engine, make sure to open your intake, clean it out of all the soot inside there, and just make it nice and clean. And then there's a little diaphragm on that intake, which basically I've got valves in the intake which open and close. So on high revs, high revs, highway speed, it opens up. And when you're doing low, if you need low end torque on low range or low crawling, it closes it. I don't exactly know how it works. That's what I can understand from what I've been told. And that diaphragm manages those valves to go open and closed. So firstly, the valves were stuck because of all the soot. I had it cleaned, and then we realized the diaphragm's got issues. So my manifold had to be replaced. It's about 3.5, I think it's about 6 brand new, if I'm correct. But got a second-hand one, put that in there, and now the engine, the flaps and the valves are everything working correctly on the intake. Then we have got oil filter got replaced, oil, those are the basic things. He also replaced my cowling, and yeah, basically that's it, and the rest is all labor and stuff like that. So the total came down to 71,000 Rand, but that's additional manifold, oil, cowling that got replaced, and a few other minor things he did to the engine to make sure everything is up and running. So you can probably look at about 65, 60, depending on who you go. Again, this is JP's quote to me, and that is the price it costs to replace the engine. Or not replace, to fix the engine. What I forgot to add is that I also replaced my intercooler, which is now a front-mounted intercooler. When JP was busy with the engine, he noticed that my top-mount intercooler, which is normally on the D4D over here, had all the fins was closed. Now, it's apparently also not a common issue, but it happens over time with age. My dad's Fortuner over there had the same issue when he checked his after he found that out, that with all the bugs and the rain and things, those fins are very soft. And they close, and that means your intercooler doesn't work at full efficiency. So I got a good deal on the Cirrus intercooler. So I've got the Cirrus front mount intercooler over here, and the OEM one is roughly the same price. So I thought it's better to have a front mount intercooler. So let me rather just do the front mount intercooler conversion. It's roughly the same price, and it is better, like I said.
This is your intercooler. You can see all the fins got completely closed and stuff. This is usually from bugs and sticks and a bunch of stuff hitting it. And then you can see there won't be any efficient airflow through this, so then your intercooler won't work well. You can also have a look. This is now on the cold side. This is where there's an air leak. You can actually see the oil coming out of it, and that's actually how you can see you have a leak. So this vehicle probably had a boost leak the entire time while it has this. And this is quite a common issue on the D4Ds, that the top mount intercoolers break, and the reason why is you can see this is aluminium. This is there's some more oil, as you can see. This is plastic, and then they crimp it, and then because of all the heat and the vibration, it starts breaking on the plastic part. So that's the one benefit of running a different intercooler, because it's fully aluminium welded, so you can't run into these type of issues. And then usually what you would do to help this is to get an oil catch can that catches the air from here, and then you can dispose of the oil separately. We did a front mount intercooler system on Aquila. This is our stainless steel boost pipes. It's all manual bended, so there's no welding involved in it, so they're very strong. They've got really good flow. The main benefits for running a front mount intercooler is that you won't be getting heat soak. So that's where the engine heats up the top mount intercooler. So now the intercooler sits in the front. One, when you're going faster, a lot of more air goes through it, so you get about 3 to 4 times the amount of airflow. Also, when you're doing slower and say sand driving and stuff, the viscous fan keeps pulling air through the intercooler, so you can cool it down. The main benefits is that we can keep the EGTs nice and low. That helps a lot with engine reliability and longevity. And also you can start getting a better power output, so we can do a bit more tuning on it, or you can just get a little bit more like better fuel consumption as well.
So we've got the front mount in here. It just forces cold air, a lot more cold air in here, and yeah, it's just better. JP from Cirrus will give you the whole rundown. He'll explain to you why the front mount is better. But yeah, got that on, got the piping going here. It's now replaced, so we just had to move my winch forward. So that was a bit of an ordeal to try and fit it in the front with the winch in here. So it was a bit of an ordeal to get that fitted, but front mount intercooler is also in, so that's another upgrade to the Hilux. Now, many people also ask me, why didn't I go with an engine swap like a V8 and things like that? Now, I do one day want to go with a V8, but however, I don't feel like the Hilux is the best body or structure to use for a V8. You're going to break CVs, you're going to have to do the gearbox, you're going to have to change the clutch, you're going to have to change this and that and this and that, and then it becomes a whole big ordeal and a lot more expensive, obviously. So the cheapest option was to do just a repair on the engine, to go for another D-4D engine swap to buy another engine, which would cost about roughly the same to about 120,000, which I've heard, then you also don't know what engine you have. That injector could also be old. You don't know what issues that engine had prior. So again, the best thing was to just fix my current engine. Then I know what I have, I know it's fixed, I know what's been done to it, and I know what is happening. Other precautions you can take: make sure injectors are working, fuel filters, I've told you that, maintenance, where to throw in fuel. I think that's about it. That's main things I did. Engine's up and running again. We fixed everything. Now it's just all the minor things I have to fix again while the car was out of service. I took the roof rack off, fixed the bumper, fixed this, fixed that. All little TLC things. A lot of the other questions I had was regarding the fuel filters, which we spoke about, changing to a V8 or a D4D, which I spoke about, the mapping, which I also spoke about now. And I think that was most of the questions answered. If there are any other questions that you think I'm missing, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, main story is make sure maintenance is good, check your injectors, and that is the whole process of destroying my engine, getting it back up and running, and Aquila is up and running and ready for more and has done more adventures since. Again, drop me any comments in the drop me any questions in the comments below if you have any, and then I'll answer it there and make a second video if need be. Until then, see you guys on the next adventure. Cheers.